cooperate. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, panel, very much for putting this together. Thank you to Shepherd Mellon for hosting us tonight. And I'm really looking forward to this in a lot of ways. I think even though we had some changes almost right up to the last minute here with this panel, the fact that we've got a full panel is a good indication that this is a hot subject. And as a journalist, I always look for what are the subjects that are really new and interesting. You know, where's the innovation coming from? And you're going to hear that tonight. We've got a really good group assembled, as it turned out. So to kick things off, why don't I just have each of you introduce yourselves and just tell us very briefly what you're doing in the robo-advisory space. And we're going to do mic passing here. Just to let you know, these mics are very directional. So as you see, as I'm holding it here, that'd be a good idea for you as well, because it's hard to hear if you don't. All right.
Check. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Greg Bennett. I work with Village Capital. Village Capital is an early stage venture fund and accelerator program. We invest across a number of different sectors, FinTech being one of them, in the United States, Latin America, Africa, and India. So we actually have two robo-advisor investments, one here in the US and one in India. So happy to bring a little bit of a global perspective to the discussion.
Excellent. My name is Charles Diossi. I work for the Hong Kong government. Invest Hong Kong has an office here in San Francisco, and we are here to engage with our customers, which are looking at expanding their business in Asia through Hong Kong. I'll be happy to share my experience on the Roboadvisory space. Back in 2015, I was part of the team at 8 Securities, and we launched the first Roboadvisor in Asia. It was a very interesting experience, a lot of talks with the regulators, a lot of, I would say, study of the business flow, and having some feedback for you from the Hong Kong Roboadvisor space, as well as the Japan Roboadvisor space, where we are very active also.
Jim Favero. I'm the Chief Product Officer of Personal Capital. We were the first, and other than the incumbents, probably still the only hybrid advisor, marrying technology with human financial advisors to drive a better customer experience. And we also lead with our free service and free tools that help over 1.5 million people better manage their financial lives. And the one-line explanation is we're meant for rich people.
Hi.
Hi,
I'm Steve Lusnick. I'm Chief Revenue Officer with Trizic, and we are not a investment advisor, and we are not a robo. We are a pure technology company that enables investment advisors, asset managers, insurance companies, and banks, trust departments, compete with the likes of the robo-advisors. So I'm glad that we could be here and offer a different perspective, but I'm guessing that there's going to be a lot of commonalities between the need to give that investor a superior experience through the use of technology and through the use of a human being, an investment advisor. So I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thanks for having us.
I'm Thad Longson, the COO for Robust Wealth. We are a robo-advisor, but we're in the B2B space as opposed to B2C. And so we offer our investment models as well as our tech to registered investment advisors, but we also do it to enterprises as well, whether you're a bank or a large financial services company, to be able to use our tech and our investment models and investment rebalancers, all that sort of stuff, to help their clients grow their assets and be able to make their advisors much more efficient at what they do. So that's us.
Hi everybody, my name is Mike Sidmore. I'm a venture partner at Broadhaven, where we built an early stage pre-Series A FinTech fund out of a larger FinTech investment bank and advisory firm that works with a lot of corporates in the top end of the market across all different areas of financial services. So in FinTech, we mainly invest in enterprise and technology-focused FinTech companies that sell their technology solution to the enterprise financial institutions. So our view is that future of FinTech is really about collaboration between incumbents and startups. So we actually invested in Trizic as one of our investments. So we view the B2B business model as one that that works since a lot of incumbents want to use technology to improve client experience. Also reduce headcount and reduce operating costs.
All right, well, good job. Let's get right into it here. And one of the things that I wanted to address right up front tonight is the difference between robo-advisories and portfolio management software. The software's been around a long time. Talk a little bit about what's different with what you do, and also specifically, who are the kinds of clients that you're looking for that could really benefit from this kind of service? What's the client model look like?
Well, portfolio management systems have been around for a long time. I was employee number 30 at Advent Software, so I started in this business in 1987. So I've been in this space, I've seen a lot. They had the Cadillac for portfolio management, portfolio accounting software. And when I think about portfolio management software, even today, it's very much built for an institution. It's not built for collaboration with an investor or a consumer, whether that consumer is an individual investor, CalPERS, it doesn't matter. That portfolio management system is really built to make that investment firm a whole lot more efficient, compliant, and effective at what they do, which is generating alpha in terms of investment performance, and in some ways, generating some operational alpha. Now the problem is, most of these portfolio management systems were built in silos. You had Advent build a portfolio management system, you had Charles River build an order management system, you had execution management systems from Bloomberg, you had security masters from Thomson Reuters, I can go on and on and on, and the total cost of ownership for a portfolio management system is sky high, right? So now, this is the good news, I love the idea that what robos have done. They brought together some of those disciplines of a portfolio management system, and they exposed them very efficiently to the end investor. So now what we have is we have a new way of delivering investment advice, investment performance, operational alpha to the investor. So the way I view it is right now, we have the early stages, probably the bottom, the bottom of the first inning in a 9-inning game of the value that a digital advice platform, robo platform, can provide to an institution and to the end investor. Betterment and some of the other early B2Cs, personal capital, have proven, and even to an extent Schwab and Vanguard, have proven that there's value to that end investor by providing this technology, by providing models that are cost effective. So I think what's going to end up happening with this technology, it will continue to evolve, it'll become more robust in its capabilities, and ultimately it's going to create a new type of investment advisor, asset manager, bank. These institutions are going to be changed forever because of the early innovation that's happened with the B2Cs. But again, it's very, very early, so the technology is going to evolve, the functionality is going to evolve, and ultimately the economics of the business are going to evolve.
Okay, others, Thad, you want to go?
Go ahead.
Sure. Greg? I'm sorry.
Does this work? Yeah, great. So that was actually very compelling. And I like that you go back to 87, because I don't feel as old. So, when I think about what we've done at Personal Capital, and I look at our, the people that started at the same time as we did, like Betterment and Wealthfront, and I think about the back office systems and kind of what does it mean to be a robo-advisor, and I kind of go back to like the simplest early thing I thought about, which is like, it's just an ETF wrap, dude. It's not that complicated. Like, there's just not that much there. And I think there's more there now. Like, there's kind of more evolution of what the underlying portfolio management systems are doing. Like the things we do, we actually use individual securities plus ETFs to build portfolios. We allocate dividend-paying securities to tax-deferred accounts. To do tax locations that you get better kind of tax optimization with using individual securities that create a synthetic index that mirrors domestic equities. We're able to do more efficient and better tax loss harvesting rather than waiting until your VFINX goes down and selling it to buy another S&P 500 ETF, we can pick one security, like Equifax was last week's security, right? Whole Foods was a month ago, because we try to keep people kind of evenly weighted across their exposure to domestic equities and also sectors. And then we can also do things like, if you work at Apple, we don't own Apple. If you use an ETF wrap robo-advisor and you own Apple, guess what? You own more Apple. So I think our portfolio management, our underlying system is kind of more complex, and I think that's really the evolution. Bill Harris, our CEO, said originally you started with securities, domestic equities, turn of the century in 1930. When computers were powerful enough to calculate net asset value at the end of the day, you had mutual funds. And then now you have ETFs. And now with the cost of trading and with the way our software can handle these things, we have custom-built portfolios for everyone, which is what we have. So I've been a client of Personal Capital since we launched our wealth management in 2011, and my portfolio will look different than someone with the same asset size portfolio today, because we've moved in and out of securities over time, and that's all done automatically by the portfolio management software to help people track against their target portfolio allocation. And so that's kind of the underlying magic of portfolio management part of a robo-advisor. I think what most people think of when they think about a robo-advisor is to create that same seamless experience that everyone expects with the software you use every day, on top of the decrepit, aging, trash heap, dumpster fire stack of financial services that we all have to work with every day. And so the better robo-advisors are really good at hiding all that stuff from you.
Dad, you want to chime in?
Yeah, just 2 points there. You know, portfolio management systems, you know, they're great, but they're usually just for, you know, the larger firms that have the better tech, right, to be able to use those and use those. So robos really take that and deliver it to the masses and can do it in a more efficient way. And really, the portfolio management software is really bringing you analytics for you to do something, but the robo is going to take it to the next stage, right, and actually go and robotically do that for you. So that's the nice thing about the robos. But the second thing is really that you hit on this too, is that that's just one piece of software, right? If you're an advisor and you have your portfolio management software, but you also have, you know, probably 10 different things, right? And they don't talk to each other. So we call it the Frankenstack, right? You know, I've got to go into this system to be able to do this. I got to go into iRebound to do my rebalancing, and I've got to go into you know, some other piece of software to be able to do, you know, my CRM, or to be able to do my performance management. You know, I've got all 10 different pieces of software, right? Whereas now the robos come in and ties it all together. They all talk to each other, and it does it efficiently and saves a lot of time for people and gives you better analytics because you are looking across all the different software pieces.
Charles? You wanna-
Yes, what I just want to add as well is this robo-advisor industry basically gave access to investment to many new customers. Many people were not investing before or were scared about the whole process. So there is fantastic technology behind, but there is also a new user experience which has been delivered by all the companies represented today. And it really gives access, and it brings to the market new investors which can come with a lower first investment amount and get a much better experience. So there is on both sides, technology on the back office and also new user experience, which is helping the overall industry to get more assets, more kind of customers, and also new generations of customers, which will be basically interacting only through mobile phones, for example. And we see this very much in Asia when we launch Roboadvisor in Hong Kong or in Japan. That was totally new people. People who were not investing with the banks. They all have a bank account, it was basically a saving account, and they were not comfortable with the flow. The experience was just having too much frictions, and the robo came in and said, okay, you want to invest 100 US, 200 US, you want to try, you want to start to understand and get into the learning process of investment, and the robo-advisor really brings this kind of education. So they brought education and access. And when you operate a robo in Hong Kong, you operate in Hong Kong for the Hong Kong market, but you also operate for the markets all around. And you find out that there is many very various type of investors and new type of investors. So I think this aspect of giving access to people to investments through technologies is really much a contribution to the industry from the robo-advisors.
Okay, Michael?
Yeah, I want to kind of double click on one thing you said, Stephen, what you alluded to, Charles, was kind of giving people access. And I think it's interesting, kind of when you think about robos, is they've kind of enabled the end consumer to actually reach this. I mean, you've done that in personal capital. You've enabled the end consumer to consume financial services and financial advice in a very simple, seamless way. But there's a lot of stuff on the back end. The interesting question then becomes, it's you've seen a lot of tech-first millennials want to gravitate towards robo-advisors because they think, okay, I want an easy solution. I don't want to talk to people necessarily. But what happens as they get older? As they become, the high earners, not rich yet, the Henrys. What happens as they have more complex financial lives? What happens when to the high net worth individuals when there's going to be, World Economic Forum said, somewhere between $30 and $40 trillion in wealth transfer. So will they want a human advisor, or will they want a robo-advisor?
If only there was a solution that married technology plus people. If only that existed.
One of us too on his panel.
I just want to add one thing to that, because our life is spent trying to provide all advisors that capability where personal has already been on the leading edge. This is where some of the innovation happened. But you have to understand the vast majority of the world isn't nearly as sophisticated as personal capital. When it comes to investment advisors, banks, right? Insurance companies, investors. So what's going to happen, I think, is it's going to take time. Technology is adopted in cycles. We're in the first phase of this cycle, and thank you, Personal Capital, for being innovative, because you're teaching us, the rest of the industry, how to do it. And so you don't want to be first, you want to be somewhere in the middle so you can copy. So anyway, I just add that in there, but that's what's really cool about space. Someone's got to be a trailblazer.
If you're not first, you're last.
Well,
Second mouse gets the cheese.
this will be interesting.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about kind of the business picture and what that looks like. And I brought along a couple of metrics just to throw out there to see, what your reaction is. The first is that there's a recent report showing that more than 80 robo and hybrid services have launched just in the last couple of years. There's a lot of companies moving into this space. But interestingly, there's also a growing gap in terms of AUM, where, and this is just as of August, so it's pretty recent, Vanguard had 65 billion, Schwab 16 billion, and then basically the top three other companies below that had a combined 21 billion between them. So can you talk a little bit about the gap and what your feelings are about all the companies moving into this space? And Greg, why don't you start?
Sure. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I think the scoreboard speaks for itself, at least for now. I don't think this is, in 5 years, I'm not sure if that gap will look the same, especially as, Michael was talking about this earlier, Stash just reached 1 million customers. The mass market retail robo kind of focus, I think, is picking up steam, and I think it's a testament to really good attention to customer engagement and building the trust with these mass market customers, millennials and otherwise, that aren't looking necessarily for an entire portfolio strategy. They're looking to invest a portion of their income in a way that is easy to do and beats the incumbent savings account 0.0001 yield. So I think that's going to change over the next 5 years. What was the second part of the question?
Well, there's the gap, and then is there a shakeout coming? You got all these companies coming in.
I mean, there's gonna be winners and losers. I think that I think that the large banks are waking up to understanding that their Frankenstacks are not going to work. And some of them have been on a purchasing spree. I think that's going to continue, at least in the short term. So yeah, I think that it's going to change, and there's going to be new names, and maybe they're going to be roll-ups, and maybe there's going to be some consolidation. I don't think there's going to be 80 of those in the next 5 years in the U.S. Internationally is a completely different game.
Charles?
Yes, if I can add to this, when we launched this first Roboadvisor out of Hong Kong, the biggest challenge was actually customer acquisition. If we look at numbers in the industry or how VCs look at companies, how can you acquire customers and basically build the trust? We have to remember we are selling finance services. The trust is just at the core of it. We are not selling books online, we're not selling services we can stop from 1 month to another. We are basically telling the people, put your assets with us and we are as trustable as a bank and the brand you know for hundreds of years. So it's one of the big challenges, the cost of acquisition, and also the way this distribution, and because of the cost of acquisition is so high, I think we're going to see some new players coming in. And what we see in Hong Kong is more and more B2B2C robots coming in. And what is very interesting is basically they're not going to hunt for banks. These robots are designed for telecom companies, e-commerce companies, which already have customer bases. So they already have customers. And for them, to move them to Roboadvisor will just be an upsell process. So the cost of acquisition for these new companies out of Asia will probably be like zero. When some of the markets will spend dollars and dollars and dollars to say, okay, we have a trustable brand and you can come with us. So we might see some people investing money in different mediums and avenues. And I think this will be for the consumer side. This will be very interesting to see. Let's say if Uber or Amazon offers me to invest at very low cost, we might be surprised by the number coming up. So I think it's something to keep in the radar for the coming years.
Okay, who else wants to take that up? Michael at the end?
Yes, go first.
Yeah, so when I think about this, to your question, 80, what does that look like in a few years' time? I think there will be a few B2C models that win. They'll have to be the ones that are well capitalized because, to your point, Charles, the cost of customer acquisition, the math just doesn't work out unless you have a significant amount of AUM. If you think about some of the B2C models, they need to spend a significant amount of money to gain trust, gain a brand, and acquire customers. I've heard numbers thrown around of like $1,000 cost of customer acquisition. If you do the math, say an account's close to $33,000 or $50,000 average account size for one of these direct consumer platforms. And I won't make you kind of get into your numbers or anything like that, and you probably know much better than I do. But when you think about the math there and you're charging 25 basis points, I mean, it's a 10 to 12 year payback period on your CAC. So the CAC to LTV ratio it's very hard to work unless you're well capitalized. I think there are a few that are. Personal Capital's raised a bunch of money. Betterment's raised a bunch of money. I'd probably bet on those two. Maybe a Wealthfront wins, but other than that, I think the direct-to-consumer model is really challenged. You need kind of probably 20 to 30 or 40 billion dollars of AUM for that to work. Because as we know in the wealth management world, I was in a company that built a feeder fund platform to give high net worth community access to private equity funds and hedge funds called iCapital Network. You need to have very significant volume of assets to make a little bit of money. So that's just the way that the math works on the direct-to-consumer side. So my view is that the B2B business model will work. You may never have billion-dollar businesses there, but you'll have businesses that become very attractive to technology buyers who view that the technology is an asset and they can distribute that to their customers. So you think about custodians, Fidelity, Schwab, TD, et cetera. Schwab already has their own intelligent portfolios, but when you think about these firms, these custodians, they work with the registered investment advisor community, which is the fastest growing segment of the wealth management space. There's trillions of assets at this point. There's $1.6 trillion of assets in the independent RIA space. It's only growing, and they're gaining market share from what are called the wirehouses, the UBSs, the Merrill Lynches, the Morgan Stanleys, because advisors want to go independent. They can make more money themselves, and they can provide open architecture advice, so they're not conflicted with their clients. And I think that the B2B business model, which a few of these firms sell into, there's a need for advisors to have that technology. And given the human element and the trust factor, which Personal Capital does as well, by providing kind of human or digital advice augmented by the human, I think you're going to see a lot of technology solutions be successful that sell into the enterprise and partner with a lot of these financial institutions and then ultimately get bought by them.
So just add to that, I really feel like you do have to look at it as the, B2C versus B2B, right? They're very different animals there. And like you said, the economics are very different. In the B2B space, right, we go to an advisor and probably the cost is the same as getting a regular customer, right? But yet that advisor has, 100 to 250 accounts, right? So you kind of get that all at once, and so the economics are very different. And then, for the B2B guys, I really do feel like it's a scale game. It's going to be like the ETF market, where you're going to have a few really big guys, right, that can deliver that tech to the B2B guys, and be able to get in and have that market share and be able to go to those. But there's such a wide open space right now, right? So you look at the advisor and themselves, right? So they're getting all the tech and all that sort of stuff, and there will be providers for that, and they're changing the game. But then you look at these other enterprises, whether it's your TAMPs, your turnkey asset management platforms, or your banks, or your big, large financial institutions. Like even the 401k providers, right? So they're great because they're in, they got their 401ks going, but they all exit at some point, right? So they want to be able to hang on to that money. So they need to be able to offer their own little, hey, you want to do a rollover IRA? You just left your company? Click here, and boom, 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 3 minutes, you've got your own account set up, right? And it stays with that provider as opposed to losing it to another advisor or to a personal capital or whatever type thing, right? So there's a big opportunity. So I think that you're going to see the bigger firms come in. So the Betterments and the Wellsfronts and the personal capital have certainly done a great job of building the space. But then your big guys are going to come in. They're either going to partner with someone who's doing it, or they're going to build their own and be able to have these, because these capabilities are really important. So.
Steve, go ahead, Jim.
Two things. I think that you have to consider the B2C's architecture. Does your architecture allow you to go B2B? Because if it doesn't, you're probably already successful, or you're going to fail. My guess. Because where are you going to get unless you have, BlackRock and Future Advisor? You have assets that can be moved to that platform. Or you have to pivot, you have to change your technology. That's expensive, it takes a lot of time, and then you need to sell through, and will the marketplace accept a platform that their competitor is offering? So that's one consideration. The other consideration you have to take a look at is, if you are B2B, you have to get traction fast. Because if you don't get traction fast, there are too many other people going at the space. So my guess is you're gonna see more people coming to the B2B space, either through roll-ups of B2Cs to some other technology, and they're gonna cobble something together, or you're gonna see the B2Cs here. Now, internationally, I didn't say anything there. There's probably lots of room for B2C, because there's no clear player there. Hong Kong, I'd be curious to see if there's a clear industry leader there in the B2C or the B2B place. Very early, so maybe there's some lessons to be learned from what happened here that are gonna go on there. In terms of the asset gap, it's a whole lot easier to convert assets when they're already on your book. Schwab and Vanguard had that. It's a whole lot harder to do that when you're personal capital and you're getting a client one at a time. I'm not going to talk, you hit that point about the challenges associated with that, but I like the fact that there's so much movement in the investment advisor space. Who was it that, National Planning Corporation. There was an acquisition. So now you have hundreds, if not thousands, of registered investment advisors who are saying, I don't want to go there, I want to be independent. And these guys have books of $25 to $500 million in assets. Perfect for a digital advice platform. Already integrated into my custodian, already fits. That's a great opportunity to gather assets. So I think you're going to see a lot more. The players that are enabled to do that can convert those assets to their books, enable the advisors who house those representatives or who allow them to be independent, will be the winners for the next 2 to 3 years.
So a wise man once said, the second mouse gets the cheese. Who said that?
Did you say that? Someone wiser than me.
So I think, except in this situation, I think new people who are B2C in this space, because of the cost of acquisition, unless they have a unique partnership or value proposition, are going to have a hard time getting successful. I am frequently asked, well, you do this free software thing, and why, and how is it different than Wealthfront, how is it different than Betterment? So Wealthfront and Betterment, Wealthfront especially because they haven't done any partnerships or anything, they pay to get someone to come to their site, and the barrier to entry is they need to open and fund an investment account, which is a really high barrier that you have to climb. We provide a bunch of free tools that people value and love, and they're on Android and iPhone and iPad and Kindle, but that's really for no good reason. We're gonna get rid of that because no one uses Kindles anymore. And so there's these great free tools and people come in, and our advisors and our software prospects these people because we see the data. Like I was joking with someone earlier, I'm like, the easiest thing to do is sell against Edward Jones because they're literally screwing all of their customers. Like, it's so easy to do that. It's basically like, here's the Nest cam of your advisor breaking into your house and stealing all your jewelry. Like, here it is. We have it right here. Would you like to leave your advisor? Yes, I would like to leave. Thank you for showing me this. I want to leave my advisor. That's what we do. Except they may not steal the jewelry, but they're charging like 225 basis points between advisory fees and product fees. Like, you might as well, after like 2 or 3 years, you could buy all the jewelry. So with us, our advisors sign people to be clients today who have been using our service for 3 years for free. So you talk about building trust. What builds trust? We give you good advice on a regular basis. We help bring your entire financial picture together. We help you plan for retirement. We keep adding free tools. We keep adding to the platform. We make people available to you, and that builds trust over time. And that's how we lower our cost of acquisition. But of course, we have human advisors, so we're going to charge more for it, which means that we have a good LTV to CAC, which means we have a reasonable payback period, which means we have a functional working business model that will allow us to be an independent company going forward. But if you're brand new to this space, unless you have some new angle on it, you are in a world of hurt. Because it is, I'll tell you, the first couple of years we were in business, like these guys on the end, they didn't want to talk to us, right? The Silicon Valley VC guys are like, get back to me when your months to pay back is like 1, right? It's like, hey, we're at like 16, but our LTV is like, our net LTV is like $28,000. They're like, get back to me when it's under 12, preferably under 6, right? So it's a really hard space to be in, especially with the cost of acquisition, unless you have a unique model. So I think people who are in B2C now coming out with it, it's going to be a struggle for them.
One final comment on this too. I totally agree. I don't see it very hard to decide to actually build a direct consumer robo business now. And you actually see a bunch of these come out. I've seen a bunch of them. And all trying to take slightly different angles, but it's just so difficult. The other piece of this too, I think, to your point about, which ones will differentiate themselves, I think it's either value-added services or it's new products that you can offer. So I think the firms that are able to offer things like alternatives, and now there's some structural issues. I mean, not everybody can get into a private equity fund. You have to be a certain level of net worth, you have to be a qualified purchaser, 5 million net worth and above, in some cases accredited investor in other cases. But firms that can offer that as part of their investment solution, then I think you actually start to get into an interesting world where the automated investment advice platforms then start competing with the registered investment advisor platforms who are more human-centric and have been traditionally the conduits to get access to this fund. So I think that'll be another interesting evolution of this space to see if the automated investment platforms end up trying to kind of innovate around product or offer new products, whether it's directly or through partnerships.
Well, that's actually a great segue to the other question I had as a follow-up to this, Michael, which is, as a journalist covering technology in many shapes and forms, it seems like every conference I go to, there's refrigerators, dog food dishes, ice cream trucks with AI, artificial intelligence. Everybody's got to have AI. So this space seems like a natural for that. I'm curious, are any of you doing AI or thinking about it, and what role will it have in the robo-advisory field?
Who wants to go first?
Pat, go ahead.
Sure. No, it's definitely a big thing, right? So anything that's you can take and build an algorithm around, certainly that's going to fall right into our hands. And there's clearly more and more applications for that. I think in the just right now in the robo space, you want to be able to when maybe this is a bit shift in the topic, but what makes a good robo, right? It's something that you come in and it knows what your risk tolerance is, right? You want to make sure that the robo is able to take into consideration your unique needs, right? And it takes into consideration your goals or your timeframes, right? So it has your risk on this side and your time frame on this side, and it's going to allocate around that, right? And it's going to be able to do it in a curved shape with a bandwidth to be able to trade into that. So you want to be able to have a sophisticated rebalancer that considers, taxes, costs, and the volatility, right? So those are the key things that a robo does, and it takes into consideration all these AI pieces to that. Now, going forward, right, we can just get better at that, right? So you take a look at the risk, right? And most robos will have a risk tolerance questionnaire. Some of them, there are 2 questions, and others are very much longer or whatever type thing. But in the future, AI is going to play a big role in that, right? It's going to tap into all your social media, right, and see, if what you said on the questionnaire actually ties into your habits or what you do, right, type things. Or if you've got a speedboat and a race car and stuff, and yet you say you're ultra conservative, it doesn't match up, right? But so all those things can kind of tie in to help getting us better risk metrics or better time frames, or knowing that your kid's going to school or whatever your time frames, right? So all that stuff can really be automated to help tie into more sophisticated robo advice. So that's a key thing with a robo. And then in the future, it's going to look at more investment capabilities, right? So it's going to be able to say, geez, social media is hot in this one spot. We should probably allocate some of your portfolio to that, right? And so there's all kinds of applications of AI going into robos, and we're just kind of getting started in that. But it really does come back to the basics around what makes a good robo and making sure that it's a very sophisticated engine that creates this, because there's a big difference, right? And can it build around a completion portfolio? Does it take into historical holdings, all that sort of stuff? Or is it just you open an account and you invest into ETFs into this very narrow piece, right? So there's all kinds of capabilities that comes into that.
Charles?
Mark, if that's okay, I will share another angle of this story. I used to be promoting robo-advisors and facing customers, and I find out the word robo was just terrible name the media gave us, because people were thinking, what? It's going to be a machine to manage my money? And you come to us now with AI, which will be really an extra topic on this cell. I just want to take and remember, I only have the view of B2C. B2B is a very different story. But on the B2B side, we have to think and put ourselves in the shoes of the investor on the other side of the product, and thinking, okay, how much trust, and we are in finance, we are investing the saving of people, and are they comfortable to leave some machines manage their assets and grow their wealth? So there is still a long journey. I think people are comfortable with artificial intelligence or machines for all kind of things, and there will be more and more. But just think of the driverless cars. Not everyone will be ready to jump in the driverless car for today. Probably in 2 years' time, people will say, okay, I only want a driverless car. But it's going to be a journey also. So the robots are in the journey right now, and if we put AI on the top, it's going to be for the mass market, something really scary.
One thing to think about with AI that I think makes it probably a little further out, when you think about it being applied to kind of into the investment advice piece of it, is you need, for AI and machine learning to work really well, you need a lot of data. It gets better as there's more data. So if you think about that, then you should think about, okay, what are larger install bases that have a lot of data already that you can then use. So I think if AI is going to be applied to investment advice, it's probably going to work better with existing install bases, which are banks or platforms that have a lot of people on them already. If you're a robo who says, I'm gonna build an AI solution and I'm gonna start acquiring customers, I think it's gonna be really challenging to do that. I also think that AI will probably first happen behind the scenes. Then you'll start to see customer-facing solutions first develop in terms of things like chatbots and kind of customer service applications for AI before you really get into the investment advice piece of AI.
And the regulation can be a bottleneck.
If only there was a platform with tons of customer data applying AI to. But I'm not gonna build a chatbot. I'm not gonna build a chatbot because those are really irritating, I think. What I say about chatbots is imagine Comcast decides to put their entire support force chat in the hands of a chatbot, and the chatbot is programmed to not solve your problem until they upgrade you on something. And that's chatbot hell. I don't think we want to go there. So we've been doing, I would say, like simplistic AI for a long time since the start, because our model is we have all this aggregated financial data. People come in, they link their external accounts. We analyze asset allocation, fees, spending patterns, how much they're saving, how much they're saving for retirement, the velocity of their spending, velocity of their savings, spending by category. We analyze all these things on a regular basis every night and push out insights to people. And we push out those same insights to our advisors. So when an advisor gets on the phone with someone, they can go in and take a look and see, okay, this person has these issues. They don't have any international exposure. They don't have enough domestic equities. They're holding too much cash. They're paying this much in fees. So that powers our financial advisors. So that's kind of where we started a few years ago. Now we're moving into, we are doing some, I wouldn't say chatbots, but we're doing some interruptive things where the advisor pops up when you're in the app and says, hey, I noticed this, would you like some help with it? And that's powered by AI, that's then handed off to a financial advisor. So if we're driving engagement at scale, and for doing prospecting and kind of lead scoring, that's where AI has played a big role for us so far.
I can also see AI playing a really important role in the investment advisor's practice. Because if you look at these independent investment advisors, there are thousands of them who are sitting in an office in Marin, in the East Bay, everywhere, and what they really want is, how am I doing relative to other people in my business? So data aggregation, analytics, delivered, that's actionable so they can take their very limited resources and apply them to the opportunities that are going to yield them the most return on their time. Or save them time, because these guys are way overworked. They're average, what you say, 58 years old. Someone's saying the average investment advisor is 58 years old, doesn't know how to use technology. So there's a sea change going on. So robo is a very static term. I'm with you there. It's digital advice. Digital advice is what we should be thinking about, because we're going to fundamentally stop being for a small little account and be for every single account that is being asset managed, that is being financial planned, that is being saved for retirement. And I think AI is going to change the way that an investment advisor works. Some people say, well, it's going to go the route of the travel agent. I don't think so. We still need somebody when, I could book my own flight on United, but when the shit hits the fan, I want to talk to somebody, I want to get something done. So I think that model is going to work, but to take AI and make that person so much more effective in their time management is really where it's going to be. And we're seeing that happen already. We're seeing people want to take our technology and plug it into whatever they view as mission critical inside their organization, banks, large institutions, and that usually sits within the CRM. That's a place to start, because that's where they're tracking all the activity. So I think AI is going to become a crucial play, and I'm really interested in what Personal Capital is doing there, because they do have a great set of data. They're doing some really innovative things.
So just a lot of the companies that we work with are very early stage, generally pre-Series A. There's been, of the robos that we've seen come through our pipeline, I think, and other kind of very technology focused B2C plays in FinTech, I would say a very small number are thinking about setting up the data architecture early on in order to implement an AI solution B2C. I think that's to their detriment. I think they're very focused on trying to convert customers and drive CAC lower, drive LTV higher, like get to Series A so that they can start paying themselves. But I think that on the B2C side, AI for AI's sake for the newer incumbents is just, I don't think it's going to happen soon. B2B is completely different. I think you're absolutely right there. And I think for the larger incumbents on the B2C side, if you're not getting better, faster, stronger in your service to your customers, like, what are we doing here? So I agree with everybody.
All right, well, we've hit a few highlights, and before we continue on with my list of questions, I want to give those of you here tonight in the audience an opportunity to ask this great panel what's on your mind that you'd like to hear from them. So let's take a quick pause here, at least from my side, and open it up to any of you who have questions for our panel tonight. Anyone out there? Yes, go ahead.
So my question is internationally. Sorry. Hi. My question is internationally, when you implemented robo-advisory services, what kind of regulatory challenges did you have to go through, and how did you address them?
That's a very good question. So when we launched back in 2015, the first robo-advisors, the regulators in both Hong Kong and Japan were kind of seeing a new animal. Like they were confused, is it electronic trading, is it algorithm behind, what kind of category do you fit in? But we did this work, we kind of opened the market and get this conversation with both Japanese regulators as well as Hong Kong regulators. And it took a little bit of time, but they finally get to understand we basically deal with securities to execute trades for our customers as well as giving advice. At the end of the day, that's where maybe it links up to the conversation on AI. Regulators still wants to have someone responsible, and we want to take our responsibilities as well. That's where we are holding basically both Type 1 license and Type 4 license, which applies to dealing and advising on securities. And then it went really fine. Nowadays, the Hong Kong market is really much open to robots. We've got, if I count them well, about 10 robo-advisors which are open for business. Most of them in B2B, because Hong Kong is a leading place for wealth management in Asia, but we've got a few also in B2C. So there was a journey with regulators, but it went well.
Yeah, actually, a corollary to that question, since you answered it so well, do you see them coming out with some new regulations to address this dynamics that they are now seeing in the market?
So it's new regulations is the question.
Yeah.
For robo-advisor, at least speaking for Hong Kong, there is no need for new regulations. I think the regulators got their hand around. There was some fine-tuning done of the products from the companies to make sure we fit in regulations. It's a new way to manage wealth, but the regulations, at least available in Hong Kong, are fine. And I think in the US is more or less the same. There is no robo-advisor license. When it comes, if you want to put some AI on it, then it becomes much more complex, and maybe you have to come up with a different set of licenses, because basically the investment decision will be not under a person itself or under the responsibility of someone, but under the responsibility of a machine. And maybe the regulators today in the world are not really comfortable yet or familiar with how a machine can be responsible of something. But robo-advisor, at least for Hong Kong, there is no need for change of regulations. The path has been found.
Thank you.
Just gave you the answer right. New regulations, do they need it? No.
Good answer.
And just one about India, which is fairly greenfield for Robo. We've got one investment there in a company that's essentially a tech-enabled investment advisor that allows essentially day traders and then also retail investors to have better access to mutual funds in India. And then with some portfolio rebalancing and risk assessment of the clients. It's interesting because there have been some very high-profile mutual fund scheme issues in India in the past 10 years. But it's this is kind of, the mutual funds are embracing this because it's allowing people to essentially say, well, here's this intermediary who will build trust for us, and we will be good actors if we get, if I don't foresee that going, especially with the mutual funds that they work with, going south anytime soon. On the regulation piece, I think with Modi in charge, the less regulation, the better, especially when it comes to technology. If any of you have followed the demonetization roller coaster.
China.
Yeah. I think it's a wild west in India right now. It's going to be interesting, especially because the amount of customer trust within the formal banking system is still very low, but it's growing.
Okay,
Just to finish on the regulation, I think what will be very interesting in this robo space is we are seeing some companies which are really growing on the digital advice, and these companies have capabilities to be basically growing in multiple markets. And the challenge for regulators is how they're going to help or maybe navigate these companies growing in different markets, having different type of customers coming from different jurisdictions, and how the KYC, the EML will be able to be passporting between different jurisdictions. And this can be a great catalyzer for this industry of robo-advisors. If you are a US robo and you just with the US market, that's a good thing, but maybe you have more ambitions and you want to go to other markets. And how the regulators will help you or put frictions in this process. And we see, for example, in Europe, if you are a German regulator, you can onboard French customers. If you are in some other countries, you will need to go through a full licensing process, and it's very heavy, very costly, and some companies will just say stop. So some players will choose some different jurisdictions or some different set of license to be able to basically address different type of market. What we did in Hong Kong in terms of regulations, we basically opened the market. So if you have a Hong Kong license, you can deal with Hong Kong customers plus South of China customers. So it means the regulators helped to move the market from a 7 million potential customers in wealth management, and overnight, by a change of regulations which applies to everyone, the wealth management market in Hong Kong went from 7 million to 100 million plus because of the regulator. So that will be interesting for the industry to see how the regulators help this digital advice to basically spread all over the world.
okay, you got the mic, go ahead and ask your question.
So going off from with the international questions and with the stats that you were throwing about competition, where do you think is going to be the next big place for robo-advisors, since the US is getting pretty crowded here? And do you also, it's kind of a separate question, but on the same subject, do you see any of the big players here, say Personal Capital, Betterment, Wealthfront, moving or expanding to different continent, different country?
So I'll speak for us. We've talked to, I think, the entire country of Australia. And most of Britain. They're all like former prisoners, aren't they? It's a gorgeous place. It's a gorgeous place. I think you want to look at where the regulatory regimes are wreaking havoc. So Australia is one. So it's a great market. There's a lot of forced investments in the way they make their citizens save for retirement. So there's a lot of opportunity there. And they're interested just because they're going through so much disruption. The UK is the same way. I know the guy who started, was it Nutmeg Wealth, was one of the first kind of robo-advisors. And I met him, he had just graduated from GSB and wanted to talk about doing this in the UK. And they've had reasonable success, but there's a lot of regulatory things coming in the UK that are forcing change. So I think if you want to evaluate where is the opportunity, you want to look at where is there pain within the traditional financial services industry. And there's a lot of pain in Australia, the UK, Canada, a lot of stuff coming through in Canada as well. From our perspective, those are all, hey, it's great, they're English speaking, at least some of Canada's English speaking, right? So they're English speaking countries, they have a reasonable amount of wealth, but it still is dwarfed by the opportunity in the US. So just from our perspective, it's hard to justify. And honestly, we don't have a model that lends itself well to other countries. There's a lot of overhead. Since we do so much with aggregating held away assets, and that's what people love, now we have to aggregate Canadian financial institutions, Australia, UK. It can all be done, though we have to add, different currencies. Then we have to add different currencies where you have a home currency, because people say, hey, I'm Canadian, I have some Canadian accounts, I have some US accounts. So there's a lot of complexity for us, and we still keep coming back to the US is still the biggest market of all, and so it's hard to justify the distraction versus putting more energy into doing even better in the US?
I think as with a lot of financial services businesses, particularly when it comes to things like investment management or wealth management, I think it's very hard to think about kind of passporting to other jurisdictions just because of the regulations. To your point, I think and not only regulations, but then you have all different layers. You have to connect to data providers. Are they the same, in the UK or in Europe? Is it the same kind of custodian market structure as it is in the US with, in the US you have Fidelity, Schwab, TD, et cetera, is the same market structure there. Obviously some of these companies are global, but it's still the brain damage that you probably have to go through to do that is probably really difficult. Then you get another layer down and you say, okay, well, is the way that people in a place like Europe, in the UK, where it's more of a saver mentality versus a spend mentality like in the US, are people gonna think about investments in the same way, and provision of investment advice or products the same? So I think it's really difficult to think about passporting. I think you're going to see companies in those jurisdictions probably build their own products and or partner. I mean, BlackRock just partnered with Scalable Capital, which is a robo-advisor platform in Europe. And then I think when you talk about Asia, I think that's actually a really interesting space. And the one thing I'm curious to see is whether or not in Asia people kind of do financial services a lot differently, and then there's a lot of activity going with P2P payments, a lot through the messaging apps. So will these kind of conglomerate companies just take over and run kind of the entire people's financial life as well as their consumer spending life? So I'll be curious to see if things like that happen, or if players like 8 Securities, so there's Drive Wealth in Asia as well, which is like a brokerage as a service platform that's enabling Asian investors to access US equities. Will platforms like that just partner with a lot of these bigger,
Absolutely.
So I think that's kind of an interesting thing to see whether that'll play out or not.
All right, well, folks, I have to say an hour goes by real fast, but we do have, sure.
Move to the front. You move to the front.
You want to get one more in here, or what do you want?
One more question, but that's it.
Okay, all right.
Thank you very much. I want to thank everyone here too for their time. My name's Sean. I'm with GE Digital. And building on the international questions, I'm going to go domestic. And so we recently saw a very sort of small startup company have a big sort of data breach. I think half the country just got their data lost or taken or absconded with. So my question is regarding personal information and especially financial information, and having that as a store. What the very sort of idea of the products that we're talking about are like the sweetest cherry that they're trying to pick, right? As in terms of like bad actors out there. So I'm wondering, what is your perspective on protecting people's data and protecting your customers' data from a traditional security model versus some of the new things that we've seen in technology such as blockchain, which can inherently protect some of the transactions and so forth. So
okay, you got it. Security.
Yeah. So Robo Digital trust was with a person in the old world. Now trust is what is your cybersecurity policy?
Yep.
And so to me, you have to lead with, we are going to do everything we possibly can to protect your data. So that's our risk. You talk about portfolio risk. Our risk in our business is having one bad security breach, you're done.
right.
So we do everything we possibly can to make sure, one, our systems have the highest level of security possible. The head of our CTO was in the national security. So we take security very seriously. We probably have, I don't know if we overspent, but we spent a lot of our R&D in making sure our systems are secure, so we don't ever have a breach. So I think that everyone's going to say the same thing. Security is the most important thing, because if just one client has a bad experience, they're going to tell everybody else. This is social too. It's not just digital. This is social. You're going to see people making recommendations to go to Personal Capital on Facebook, because those are great marketing. Those are great vehicles for marketing, and that's where a lot of these millennials are. Not Facebook. Sorry.
But thank you for posting that on your Facebook.
Yeah. So I've never been on Facebook ever. I don't get it. So anyway, Snapchat. No, so everyone uses it, but anyway, my point is that, I think there's a lot of, yeah, there you go. There's a lot of money being spent right now on cybersecurity. And so we can't have it in Equifax, or otherwise it'll make robo a bad name, or digital a bad name.
All right, well put. We do have to wrap this up. I'm sure the panel would be happy to stick around and answer your questions if you have them afterwards. Thank you all very much for coming tonight, and have a great evening.